live from Whitney Media, 1460 WVOX, the Greenberg Report with Greenberg Town Supervisor Paul Feiner. You can join in the conversation at 914-636-0110. Now on 1460 WVOX, here's Greenberg Town Supervisor Paul Feiner.
Good morning, Westchester. I'm Paul Feiner. I'm the Greenberg Town Supervisor, and we have a really interesting program today. We're going to talk about branding, and we're going to be talking with Julie Cottineau, author of The TWISTS, How Fresh Perspectives Build Breakthrough Brands. And she's the founder and CEO of Brand Twist, a brand consultancy, and creator of Brand School Online. Prior to launching her own business, she was vice president of the brand at Richard Branson's Virgin Group. So welcome, Julia, and thank you so much for joining us. You were on our program a while back and learned a lot. Could you tell us maybe just a little bit about your background?
Sure. I have been working in advertising and branding and kind of twisting all my life, which means I've been looking at things from different perspectives to come up with new ideas. And actually, quick story, when I was working for Interbrand, a global branding consultancy, and traveling a lot, I was in an airport, and I was rushing for my plane, and I looked out, and I saw this jet on the tarmac with McDonald's arches on the tail fin, and I sort of stopped in my tracks and said that would be a different kind of airline, you know, an airline with a twist. Maybe I could book a regular seat and supersize it to a premium or a first-class seat, and it turned out it was a mirage. It was actually just the reflection of the food court on the window, and there happened to be a plane that was parked there. But in that, you know, maybe 20 seconds, it really solidified to me that if you're an airline and you want to stand out in the airline category, if you're any kind of small business, stop thinking about what your competition is doing. Look at brands that are outside the category that are doing interesting things and twist those insights. And that led me on this path of brand twisting, which caught the attention of Virgin and the folks there. And that's where I was the head of brand for 5 years in North America, and then started my own company actually 10 years ago this week. That was sort of my anniversary.
That's amazing. You had worked for Richard Branson, and what is his? You know, what would you characterize his brand?
Well, I think he's very authentic, caring, and I think he really lives the brand. You know, Virgin is about the Virgin, the brand, the company, and all the different parts of it, like Virgin, you know, Mobile and Virgin Atlantic and all these different brands are all about shaking things up and looking at new perspectives. And Richard, as a person, definitely lives that. You know, his corporate, quote-unquote, office is a hammock at his home in Necker Island. And, of course, just a few weeks ago, he got the ultimate new perspective where he went into space in the maiden voyage of Virgin Galactic. So he really embodies the brand values of, you know, boldly trying to, you know, find new solutions for old problems and having fun along the way, a lot of fun.
Right, so having fun is definitely part of a brand. Do some people try creating brands that don't fit them?
Yeah, I think so. And I think usually what I see is that people try to create a brand that's super professional. You know, they want to legitimize it. Maybe they're in professional services or a consultant or a coach. And they really separate their personal brand, their personal life and their personal passions and their professional credentials and their professional passions, and end up being too serious. You know, revert to a lot of jargon, what we call in my brand school, wah, 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 you know, just words that marketers say that people don't hear. And I think one of the things that the pandemic has taught us, one of the positive lessons, that you can actually be more personal.
Right. We have to take a break. This is the longest break. It's about a 5-minute break, and we'll be right back with Julie Cottineau, and we're going to be talking about branding and some of the experiences she had, and about her efforts to help others come up with your own brands. I'm Paul Feiner. We'll be right back in a couple minutes.
WVOX. Now back to the Greenberg Report on 1460 WVOX. Once again, here's Greenberg Town Supervisor Paul Feiner.
Good morning, Westchester. My guest today is Julie Cottineau, and Julie is an expert on branding. And Julie, you have a company, and could you tell us a little bit about your company?
Sure. My company is called Brand Twist, and we help businesses, large, medium, small, find their twist, which means what's unique about them, how to stand out in the markets, how to make the most of whatever marketing budgets they have. And we focus really on brand strategy, brand innovation, naming, brand launches, relaunches. And for your small, like individual companies or business owners, we have a brand school online, which is an 8-week course where we coach you, but we actually give you homework and videos and help you either build or rebuild your brand.
Could you tell us a success story or two?
Sure. We had a business a few years ago that was a kitchen designer, Joan Big Kitchen Design, and she was kind of struggling with standing out. There are a lot of really successful kitchen designers, high-end, in Westchester, and what I was kind of talking about before the break, she realized that she could twist her personal passion, which is ballroom dancing. She's an amateur ballroom dancer. It's a hobby. And her profession, which is helping people design their kitchens with better flow and more detail and working in partnership with them. And long story short, she rebranded as Kitchen Choreography. So
that's really interesting. And I guess like sort of like an example of a good brand would be, say, like the Ritz-Carlton, because people figure, oh, that is a great hotel, or Four Seasons. So, what does it really take to develop a good brand, or how do you figure out what type of brand works for say, a small business?
Well, what we do
not have as much money or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, the branding is really about your fundamental story. The marketing is getting that story out, and really focus on the branding. And all brands have to answer the question first: who do we exist for? Who's the audience for our story? And so we spend time doing that with all of my clients, not just saying, our target is, women 25 to 54, or I help develop Virgin hotels, to use your example. We don't say our target is somebody who wants a safe, clean hotel room for the night, because that's too broad, and you're going to come up with very, very generic branding. So we would say, for example, in the case of Virgin Hotels, our target is somebody who wants to travel for business or pleasure to a city, but feel like they're part of a city. They don't want to just stay in their hotel room, watch TV, order room service. They want to go down to a club area where they can meet other travelers, where they know if they're in Chicago, it feels different than the Virgin Hotel in Nashville, or feels different than the Virgin Hotel in San Francisco. So it's a very specific mindset. So we start first with what's the mindset of who you want to reach. And the trick there is actually to get really specific and really narrow. I know it feels counterintuitive, but the narrower you get on your target and the more you can imagine them as real people, the stronger your brand story will be.
I guess sort of like Donald Trump with Trump Towers, that was good branding before he became president.
Well, that's a whole other show probably, but yeah, I mean, the one thing I can say in a positive is that if you look across what the Trump brand before he became president stood for, it was a certain kind of aesthetic, a certain kind of luxury, a certain kind of attitude. So not everybody is their target, but I think they knew their target pretty well.
Right. I guess also once you brand, if you go against your brand, that could be devastating, I guess, to a business or an individual. So I'm thinking of, say, Andrew Cuomo. I guess his brand was, he was competent. You felt that he got things done. And, when he was talking about his, a government that had more integrity, then when they found out that he was lying or whatever, then it fell apart. I mean, if he had branded himself differently, could he handle this better?
I don't think it was about branding himself differently. I think his brand was pretty consistent, and unfortunately, he took it to the extreme. The sense of power and confidence that crossed over to bullying. But I think even the way he resigned was pretty consistently on brand. If you listen closely to what he said, he really apologized for people misunderstanding his intentions.
Right.
Which is a very bullying way to apologize versus apologizing for what he did. But I think, the most brand owners won't go to an extreme of making a mistake like that. I think what I encourage most of my clients is to understand what your brand is about, what your core values are, how that translates into behavior. And every once in a while, you will mess up. Everybody messes up. You, me, Richard Branson. But if you have a stronger brand, and if you're mostly consistent and authentic to your brand, then one of the benefits is your brands usually recover better when they do make mistakes.
Does your company also help people recover from mistakes as well as, branding?
We don't do crisis management, which is a whole sector in public relations that I have a lot of admiration for. There are people who really are the first call to make. What I tend to do more is if the market has shifted and your brand is out of touch with what your customers need, I help people get back on the right path.
Great. We have to take a shorter break now, and we'll be back with Julie Cottineau. What's your website, before we go on the break?
BrandTwist.com.
It's BrandTwist.com. And how could people reach you?
Julie at BrandTwist.com, or they can go on the website and reach me through there.
Great. We'll be back in a couple minutes, and we have a really interesting program, Julie Cottineau, on branding. And then we're going to talk a little bit about what made her company stand out and learn more stories. And we'll also find out why her company's focus always highlights purple. Thanks.
Now, back to the Greenberg Report on 1460 WVOX. Once again, here's Greenberg Town Supervisor Paul Feiner.
Good morning, Westchester. I'm Paul Feiner. I'm the Greenberg Town Supervisor, and my guest is Julie Cottineau. And Julie, for people who are just tuning in, could you just tell us the name of your company and how they could reach you?
Sure, it's Brand Twist. They can reach me at brandtwist.com. And if they're specifically interested in our online school, they can go to brandtwist.com/school.
And I wanted to ask, your company has chosen a color purple to represent your company, and I'm wondering, is that a brand? And, why did you choose purple?
Yeah, it was a very conscious choice because as we've been talking about, our approach is to twist things, to take two different markets that don't go together, or to, as Rich Branson, who I used to work for, created an airline, Virgin Atlantic, by twisting the airline business was what he knew about the record business, and making airlines more fun, more rock and roll. So I chose purple because literally it's a twist of two primary colors, red and blue. And so I think and I think we know this more now than ever, if you can find a way to combine things, it makes things more interesting. And purple is also a color of passion and prosperity, which are part of my approach to branding as well.
Great, and really the key to a brand is for people to tell a story, to recognize that they're the brand, and to highlight, I guess, what's unique and different about themselves or their businesses. Are some people sometimes a little shy about sharing their accomplishments? Is that a problem?
I run into that all the time, and I think in that case it's really important to make a distinction between you as a human being and you as a brand, and almost have like an avatar that might be a little bit braver than you feel, a little bit bolder. Even people like Beyonce, who seems like, she performs on the Super Bowl and would be fearless. She says she has a target avatar. She did for many years. When she went to perform, she would put herself in the character of somebody she called Sasha Fierce, and that would allow her to perform. So I think, one, if you make that distinction and you give yourself permission to be a little bolder, to say this isn't me, but this is parts of me and maybe the best of me. And the second thing I think is, don't think about it as sales or self-promotion. I mean, if you do something that you really, really believe in, then you owe everybody the chance to learn about that. I mean, if you had the cure for cancer, you wouldn't shut up about it, right? You'd tell everybody that you meet about it. And if you believe in what you do, and I hope that business owners do, or they really shouldn't be in that business, then, we need to shout about it. So I'm very passionate about branding and brand twisting because I know it changes businesses and it changes people's lives. So, I have opportunities like we're talking today, and I talk all the time, not because I want to hear my own voice, but because I really, really want to help people.
One of the thoughts questions I had is the world is changing right now. If you go down, say, Central Avenue or 119 or Sawmill River Road or anywhere, there's tons and tons of vacancies. And could a small business survive, or do they? I mean, it seems to me that they need good branding, and especially with the difficulties of e-commerce.
Yeah, well, I think right now is the time. I mean, it's a really tough time, but I think there is opportunity in times of uncertainty, and I think you can, twist that uncertainty into opportunity. I think it's a great time to experiment. I've been consulting with clients and telling them to kind of twist their target audience. Is there somebody different that you haven't thought about before that maybe could use your services? And one particular audience I think is really interesting is older consumers. We typically haven't targeted them because we think they're not as technologically savvy. But now, I have 80-year-old relatives who are Zooming frequently and know how to use lots of apps that maybe they didn't know how to use, even 12 months ago. So you could twist your target, you could twist your offering. Is there a different way to look at what you're buying and selling? I know a lot of people, photographers, for example, photography studios who pivoted to doing online image consulting and helping people look better on their Zoom calls. They used everything they knew about lighting and framing to do that. And then I think there's also a third strategy that we talk about, which is testing for the greater good. A lot of businesses think about, I should donate to a cause, or I should have pro-social as part of my strategy. But right now, I think you can really dial that up and make it, more fundamental to what you do. But I think it's important, if you're a bakery, then don't just donate money to some unrelated cause. Maybe there's a way to use your bakery space to other restaurants that might need a kitchen, or donate food to first responders, or, doctors or nurses. A lot of programs out there right now. So I think if you're a small business, let's experiment. And with those empty storefronts, maybe you could also rent out a storefront for a weekend, do a pop-up store, and test your idea. I think probably a landlord would rather have somebody in for a few days than have it look and be completely empty. So there's no harm in asking and experimenting. Really not a lot to lose anymore.
That's great. So, and how long does it usually take a business or an individual to develop a brand?
To develop it, it's probably about a 3-month process. I mean, our class is 8 months. When I work individually with clients, it's about 3 months. And then, you have to look at a launch not as a day. It's not like you're launching on August 13th. I tell clients to look at a launch as sort of a year. It's a year of constantly saying, hey, we exist. This is what we offer. These are the problems we help solve using social media, PR. People are not just waiting around to hear your message. They hear it like it over and over and over again for it to sink in. So branding is
right.
It is fully done.
Right. Right. Another question, that I have is, in terms of, when people are sort of, branding, do you sometimes tell them do people keep changing their strategies until they get the right brand? So could they start with one concept of, we have to take a break, and then we'll be right back.
Okay.
With Julie Cottineau, and we'll talk about branding.
WVOX. Now back to the Greenberg Report on 1460 WVOX. Once again, here's Greenberg Town Supervisor Paul Feiner.
Hi, I'm Paul Feiner, Greenberg Town Supervisor, and my guest is Julie Cottineau, and we're talking about branding. And before the break, I asked if sometimes brand, to get to the brand that you want, if you have to sort of make mistakes along the way. And I guess, do you modify those branding strategies along the way?
Yeah, I think when you're developing your brand strategy, if you do it properly, you'll have a pretty solid foundation. And I would let it live in the marketplace and get reactions to it before you start changing it. I definitely think you can learn from mistakes, but one of the mistakes that I see is that I kind of call it the magpie syndrome, particularly with entrepreneurs. They get distracted by different shiny objects, so they'll have an idea, and then they'll move on to another idea, and then they'll move on to another idea, and they haven't really given those ideas time to take root. So I recommend people live with it. If you're launching a new brand for at least a couple of months, get some feedback, and then definitely make adjustments as needed, but be careful. For example, if you're redoing your website, it's much more cost-effective and much more powerful if you first have a plan to redo your website, if you have a strategy, what you're trying to accomplish, and then do it. If you're just in tinkering with your copy and images and think, oh, I'll know it when I see it, and I'm just looking for something fresher or more interesting, but you don't really have a strategy about what you're trying to communicate, then that can be a huge waste of time and money. It's like you wouldn't go in and remodel your kitchen and just make it up as you go along. You know, I think I'll move the cabinets here. No, I'll move them there. No, I'll move them there. You know, you would have a plan before you start doing that. And I think that's really important in branding as well. And that's what I love helping people with, making that plan, making that framework. We actually call it a brand framework.
You have an online course, and could you tell us about that and how expensive is it to participate?
Sure. It's an online class. It's a live online class. So we meet per semester every Thursday for 2 hours, 12:30 to 2:30, live. It's usually 12 people, each 12 people, intimate cohort. And before we get online, we send homework, a video, a worksheet that people do, and they upload it. And so when they come to class, I've already reviewed everybody's work, and we can give live feedback. I also have guest faculty that come in and talk about things like social media and website design and images for your website, trademark issues, if you want to copyright or trademark a name or a tagline. And we've been running them since 2013, usually 2 semesters a year, sometimes 4. During the pandemic, I ran 4 classes. They were full every semester because people really needed help. And if anybody's interested, they can reach out to me. There's an application. You have to have a meeting first to make sure you're a right fit, but you can reach out to me at julie@brandtwist.com, and I can give you more details.
That is great. What are some of the exciting new projects that you're working on?
Well, the stuff that I'm immediately working on, I can't really talk about because a lot of it is confidential. But I'm working right now. I'm working with a healthcare company to rebrand, a mortgage company that just rebranded. They haven't announced it yet to the press, but I just finished a brand school semester where we had everybody from financial coaches to marketing consultants to wallpaper designers that are all in the process of rebranding. So, we're going to be I'm rebranding my own website right now. So we'll have some case studies pretty soon with the projects that are out in the public that we could talk about, that you can read about.
Right.
And actually, in my book, TWISTS, sorry, just to interrupt you, in my book, TWISTS, How Fresh Perspectives Build Breakthrough Brands, which is available on Amazon, we have lots of case studies where you can see Virgin and businesses of all sizes and the projects that we've worked on and their results.
The world has changed, since you started your company and since you started your experiences branding or marketing. The media, the print media, TV is probably not as important as it once was with social media. Has that made branding harder or easier with social media? And now if you get an article in the newspapers or one of your clients is interviewed on TV, it probably doesn't have the same impact as it did years ago.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's made it easier or harder. It's definitely changed the game, but I think social media has opened up an opportunity, particularly for small businesses. It's made it easier to interact with customers and potential customers directly, but I think it's also created a need for content. Social media is kind of like a machine that you have to continually feed. So you don't have to have long posts, but frequent posts and, spice it up and mix it up, and twist it up, keep it interesting. That's really important. But I think what's changed a lot is the barriers of technology. I mean, you used to have to spend a lot of money to hire an agency to create a website. And now there are a lot of tools online. If you can afford it, I always recommend still going directly with a designer or an agency. But if you're very small and you're just starting out, there are online sites where you can create a logo. You can work with GoDaddy or Wix to get a website up really quickly just to test out your idea. So I think that's exciting. You know, you don't need to have a building anymore. You don't need to have a big company. You can, you know, be your own self, working from wherever you can catch a couple hours and really work on your brand. So I'm pretty pumped about that.
That is great. We just have a couple minutes left, but you started out at Gray Global and you worked in Paris. And could you tell us a little bit about your experiences in Paris?
So, I was transferred in 1992 to Gray Paris. I had been working in the New York office for years, and I didn't actually speak French, and I didn't know anybody. It's sort of like the show Emily in Paris. If you've ever watched that on Netflix, I think that was my life. And I made a real point to learn French, because you can live in France for many years and not actually learn French. But I, even though I could have spoken English in the office, in the agency, I made sure that I took French lessons, and I made French friends and colleagues, and eventually I found a French boyfriend who 25 years later is still my French husband. So it was an amazing experience. I hope the world will open up again, and college students and, you know, people of all ages will get the opportunity to travel. Because I think you learn so much about the world and culturally and about yourself when you have to navigate, territory that's really unfamiliar.
That is, that is interesting. Anything else in the remaining minute that we have or so?
Well, I would just say, don't despair. I know it's a tough time for business right now, but I really have seen many businesses use this time as an opportunity to reinvent themselves. You know, as I mentioned before, reinvent who they target, reinvent what they offer. I think making it simpler, quicker, more affordable is great. Bring your personal brand to the table. And, now is a time even to shift industries. If you're really unhappy with what you've been doing before, try something new.
Great. So thanks a lot. And just tell us your website before the program ends.
Okay. Brandtwist.com, BRAND.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, Paul.
Good. I'm Paul Feiner, Greenberg Town Supervisor.